People who don't experience jealousy or envy often attract those who do. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. This commenter says, thank you. As someone who doesn't get jealous or envious, I feel it is directly correlated to how much you believe you can achieve the things that you want. I hate how everyone is trying to force the feelings onto us and normalizing it, saying that everyone has jealousy or envy. I couldn't agree with you more. I do agree. And, here's the thing. This is Dr. Jones's professional and personal opinion. I often think that people who don't have feelings of jealousy or envy typically struggle with attracting people that do. And usually that's why people tend to attract a lot of, if you're not a jealous person, what you may find is that you're surrounded by people who are jealous, envious, and insecure, because that's not a feeling that's known to you. And so therefore you may have trouble recognizing it when it's first displayed through all the subtleties and things like that. So you may not notice it right away, and then bam, something happens where it's sort of unleashed on you, and you thought that you were being a good judge of character, not realizing that someone was having these emotions towards you or towards what you're doing. And usually that's what I have found. And so people who don't have it usually have to learn by trial and error who's hiding, who's cloaking themselves in those feelings. Those feelings are not normal. They're common. Common and normal are two different things. Everybody doesn't have that. I also do believe that, I also agree with what you were saying earlier, that how you believe how much you can achieve to get the things that you want. I think it's that. I also think, a large part of it is individuality. If you're comfortable in your own autonomy and your own individuality, you're not typically trying to be like somebody else. You're just being yourself. And there's a lot of people that don't like being themselves. Call it what you want. But they're not okay with being comfortable with themselves. And so they feel like everybody feels like that to a certain degree. It often also, I think, immaturity is closely aligned when people can say, like, for example, my brother used to play like this game, That's My Car. You look at a car, and I got reminded of this today. I saw a Lamborghini driving down the road. I was like, oh, that was my brother's favorite car. Every time he'd be like, that's my car, And it's kind of like that. Natalie, when I grow up, I'm going to have a Lamborghini. And so there's a level of immaturity to that. Like, I covet what someone else has on the surface. It looks good, it's shiny, it attracts this attention, it's fast, it's a lot of money, it's that. But a lot of people forget about they're not thinking about the path that it takes to get there. And I think that people think a lot about the end result and not the path that it takes to get there. And so a lot of times, and that's why you might hear this rhetoric like, she came by that so easily, or she got that and she doesn't know. You get that sort of toxic rhetoric. No, you have to work for these things. You also have to understand what comes with the things that you have. It's not the fact that I just get in and drive in this fancy dancy car. I'm sure a car like that is expensive to maintain. Taxes are out of the wazoo, and all these other kind of things, right? That you have to think about. Oil change might be $1,000. I don't know, but there's all these other things that you're not thinking about that has to come with that. And it's also the same thing when other people are thinking about, well, this is just how this would looks on the surface, and we're not necessarily thinking about everything that comes with that. I just want to be like that person. I covet what they have. I covet their lifestyle, those sorts of things. But if you believe that you can achieve anything you set your mind to, you also believe that you're fantastic the way that you are, or even if you're not, you're kind of focused on your own path, that's what's going to set you apart. And that's, I think, just not making it about myself, but also, talking about myself very candidly. I think that's kind of what sets me apart from the other people is, I'm kind of on my own path. Even within my career field, I feel like I'm on my own journey. I'm not trying to be like somebody else. But this is also something, with insecurity, with things like narcissism and insecurity. Everybody's got that. There is often that push to say that we all have that. We're all alike. No, we all are not. There may be quite a few people that are like that, but there are some people that are very different, and that are exceptions to the rule. And with the trying to force that onto you, you may need to be doing a relationship audit. Maybe you might want to bring this conversation up with your friends and your people that you may not necessarily know, and ask them about this, because I also believe that inadvertently, this is people actually telling on themselves and telling on what their challenges are, and trying to normalize it so that, again, we're not having a deeper conversation, when in all actuality, we should be having a more serious conversation, and you need to be assessing your friends, your family, your coworkers, your close associates based off of this, because, some of the stuff that people are saying, coming from jealousy and envy and things like that, are actually quite alarming. So you need to pay attention to that. But also, I know when people have, feelings and behaviors and things, they will try to normalize that and make it seem like it's okay, and dismiss or minimize the level of pathology. And the way they do it is by lying, dumbing it down. Oh, it wasn't that, it wasn't this, or they didn't know, and all this. Let's be serious here. And this might be true if you're just starting out in life, you're just starting out in friendships and things like that. But people who are more seasoned and have been doing this thing called life for a while, they know what's up. So thank you for putting this down there, and I appreciate you saying what you had to say.